Yes, absolutely. So what is the combination of the two? If we have good partnerships but we don't have good leadership, what is going to happen?
Nothing.
Nothing, right? Or you're going to move very slowly, or you're only going to get so far, and then things are kind of going to tail off. So, and I don't have one of those little clicky thingies, so unfortunately I have to stand back here behind this thing.
Can you cut one of the lights off? Sorry.
Oh, yes, sorry. Both or just one? Does that work? Yeah, great, okay. So these are your learning objectives for today. You guys are master students and capable to read, so I'm not gonna read those for you. All right, so first thing we're gonna talk about is teams, the importance of teams, the role that they play in partnerships as well moving forward. So you're gonna find out that teams and partnerships really go hand in hand together. So an outstanding team is comprised of a few different things. They have a focus on accomplishing a particular goal. What about team dynamics? What are things that you think go into having good team dynamics?
Communication.
Okay, communication. Why is it important to communicate?
Because if you're not communicating efficiently, then your team members are not going to know what their roles are,
Yes.
and you're not going to accomplish the goal.
Exactly. So you have to work together as one cohesive unit. You may be individuals bringing all of these wonderful ideas in individually, but when you come together, you have to work as a cohesive unit. Here in a little bit, we're going to actually use this really interesting tool. It's called the Leadership Compass tool. And so you guys are going to find out what type of leader you are. And then we're going to apply that when you guys start working on your group projects as well. So the next one is that all the members of the team are operating as a single unit, that cohesive unit I talked about, where everyone knows what everyone else is supposed to be doing. So this is like assigning the roles, assigning tasks. And then a willingness to set aside your ego and personal ambition for the sake of the team. Why is this so important when you're working with a group of people? Told you I was going to ask lots of questions. So think about it. If I come in here and we're supposed to work together as a group, right? And I'm just overbearing and I'm saying, well, my idea is correct and this is what we have to do. Are we going to get anywhere as a team?
No.
Absolutely not. And most likely you're going to hate me in about 2.5 minutes, right? Okay. So when you're working together on a semester-long project, check the ego to the side, okay? Everybody's ideas are important. Everybody's opinions are important. You have to work together as that cohesive unit. Next is having a high level of commitment and trust between and among team members. Is this going to happen automatically?
No.
Absolutely not. You're going to have to gain each other's trust. You're going to have to go in there with that commitment, but your level of commitment is going to increase as you work throughout your project and you really start to gain the trust with each other. So as you're planning for your group work, you're assigning jobs, keep all of these things in mind as to what makes an outstanding team. Improving team effectiveness. So these are kind of two different, we're going to talk about several of them, but these first two are ways that we can really improve how effective our team is at accomplishing our task. So the first is leadership. There's going to be formal leaders and informal leaders. What do you think is going to be the difference between those two? Yes?
Well, I guess the formal leader would be like the leader of the actual whole group.
Mm-hmm.
And then informal leaders would be people who know more specifics about their topic and able to like lead the group into what they should do based on that information.
Yes, excellent. So you guys have your, what did she call it? It's like a contract for your group assignments, right? Have you guys turned those in yet?
No.
Are those due yet? No. Okay. So on that, you guys are to establish the roles of your group, correct? Right. So you're going to have your formal leader set out there. That will be the person that's kind of the liaison between your group and Dr. Beatty. or Sylvester. But your informal leaders is, say in your group, someone pipes up and says, oh, well, I'm really good at editing. So I will take on editing our project, our paper that we're going to turn in. So they're going to be an informal leader because they are opting to kind of take the lead on a particular task, but they're not leading the group as a whole. Okay? So methods of group decision making. There's the free rider. Who in here likes group work? Yeah? Me neither. Why don't you like group work?
Enjoy your back.
Yep. Anybody else? Because there's always that one person that doesn't do squat and takes credit for everybody else's work, yes?
Yeah.
That's your free rider, all right? So these are the people who don't put forth their own ideas. They're just gonna go along with the group and they're gonna fall in the very back of the process. And they're just like, ooh, I'm gonna ride this out and see what grade I get and not have to do anything. We don't want to be any of those in the group, okay? So no free riders in here. The other thing is the concept of group think. What do you think that may mean?
It's about you have your group and you've all decided on one thing, and then you guys all just keep thinking that one thing, and no one is putting in new ideas.
Right, and so how would that be a problem?
Well, your one group thinking might not be the exact way to do it.
Sure, and it creates a scenario where it's very myopic, very narrow in scope. So it's kind of narrow-mindedness. It's good to have diversity within your group. So don't be afraid to speak up and say, I really have this idea. I don't know if it's a good idea, but I have this idea and I'd like to talk to you guys about it. So even if everyone else is agreeing, be sure to speak your mind because we don't want everyone to necessarily agree on everything. Do you think we would get anywhere research-wise if everybody just agreed on everything all the time? No. So you really want to allow everyone's diverse experiences to feed into that group work. Okay. Group learning. This is obviously going to be a learning process for everyone. Group learning is a collective skill or talent and insights of the group, and they come together. Everyone learns from each other in their environment in a way not available to individual members. Why is it not available to individual members, aside from the fact that there's just more than one person in the group? Do we all come from the same backgrounds? Do we all have the same professional experiences? No. So all of those different types of experiences, whether it be personal or professional, all of those are going to lend towards your group as well. So group learning is also kind of based on that group think idea or model. Team development. There are 5 stages: forming, storming, norming, performing, and a journey. There had to be one that didn't rhyme, unfortunately. Forming stage, what do you think that is? Aside from just forming the group, what are we doing? What are you going to do in those initial stages of your group?
Getting to know one another.
Exactly. You're going to get to know each other. You're going to learn your strengths and weaknesses, and then you're going to build off those strengths and weaknesses in order to get that cohesive unit and start your project and really assign those roles based off of everyone's strengths, right? Yeah. So storming, what do you think that is?
Brainstorming?
Yes, exactly. So brainstorming. You're going to do the brainstorming session, and you're going to come up with these great ideas. And sometimes when more than one person has a great idea, what happens? Conflict, right? Sometimes. Yeah. All right. So sometimes you have conflict if someone says, well, I have this really great idea, and the other person says, well, I have this really great idea too, and one of them doesn't check their ego at the door, and all of a sudden we have this conflict, right? There's a difference between good conflict and bad conflict. So what would be a good characteristic of conflict? Think constructive. Maybe someone else brings up something that you haven't thought of before. Or they present things in a way that you hadn't thought of before. So conflict is not always a bad thing as long as it is constructive and you can build on it from there. So it's good to have the constructive conflict in order to produce these other good ideas. What about norming? What's the base word there? Norm. So normalizing. What does that mean?
When you get cohesive and start working together.
Exactly. So now that you've gone through these steps, you're going to start working as a group, as that cohesive unit, and you're going to move forward. It's coming to a consensus and agreeing on things after the storming process. And next you're going to move into performing. So that is exactly as it sounds. Each member is assigned their responsibilities. They start to carry out those tasks. And then at the end, you have adjourning, which is accomplishment of your goal. So this is at the end of the semester. You guys have done phase 1 and phase 2 of your projects. Everybody did awesome. Everybody got along and sang Kumbaya together. And then you go home for Christmas. So don't get stuck in any one of these phases for too long a period of time. It's easy sometimes to get stuck in the storming phase where you're all just kind of going back and forth with ideas constructively. The norming phase should be very, very short. You're just going to assign those tasks and then start working on them going into the performing. You have to keep in mind time management though when you get to the performing phase, because you have this very finite amount of time to get this project finished, and it will come up sooner than you expect it to. Okay, so some leadership characteristics. Think about your favorite job. Someone call out their favorite job.
Baking.
Okay. Like somewhere or at home? Somewhere. Okay. So did you have a manager for this baking position?
Yes.
Okay. What role did that person play for you?
Establishing what needed to be baked and how to go about it.
Okay. Were they a good manager? Okay. So what did they do that aided in your perception that that was a good job?
Listen.
Okay. All right. So on the flip side, bad job. Somebody call out the worst job they've ever had.
Higher ed.
I'm sorry?
I worked in higher ed.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna try not to take that personally.
No, I enjoyed my job. It was management.
Okay. So what did that manager do that facilitated that perception that you did not like it?
Nothing.
Okay, so they didn't communicate. They didn't tell you what they needed to do. They didn't train you. Any of the above.
Right.
Okay. All right. So this is why strong leadership is so important, right? If you have strong leadership, you can make a big difference. You can't make your employees do anything. You can help your employees to really enjoy their jobs, right? The flip side, if you're a really horrible leader, your employees are not going to like being there. Morale is going to go down the toilet. Okay. So, leadership. Leadership is creativity in action. And notice that action is italicized there because you can be the most creative person in the world, but if you don't do anything with it, it's pointless. Okay? See the present in terms of the future while maintaining respect for the past. What does that statement mean, and why are those 3 lines underlined?
Well, the first sentence, see the present in terms of the future, to me means seeing how what you are doing now leads to you.
Okay.
Then, while maintaining respect for the past, well, it means your past kind of contributed to where you are now. But you have to keep in perspective maybe some lessons learned in the past, now, and how what you're doing now leads you to where you want to go next.
Exactly. So, ordinarily, I would be able to tell you which president said this, but my mind is not working right now. But a president, so they were obviously important, said, those who cannot remember the past are doomed to repeat it. Right? So, if you can't remember where you've been, you can't inform your future, but you also have to be present and thinking about the future. Make sense? Yeah?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. So public health leadership is a commitment to the community and its values. It requires systems thinking. Does anybody know what systems thinking is? And first of all, what's a system?
From different paths, different sections, something.
Okay. Yeah. Anybody else? Additional thoughts on what a system is? Okie dokie. So it can be a variety of things. It can be a particular population. It can be a particular locale or a particular concentration in a program. So these are systems, right? So what is systems thinking? It's really an awareness of the interconnectedness and how everything works together and is interdependent upon one another. Okay? So you have to think of your public health careers with that systems thinking framework in mind. That kind of going into physics a little bit, but so when you have this action, there's going to be a reaction somewhere, right? Well, in these public health systems, it's not just one reaction. It's a whole plethora across all of these different systems that you're affecting. Okay, so from a biological perspective, because that's stuff I know about, if you think about like microcosms and macrocosms, you guys familiar with that, right? It's kind of a Bio 101 thing. Okay, so what is a microcosm? It's the small unit, micro, right? Okay, and then your macrocosm is made up of all of these different microcosms. So the macrocosm is the unit of all of these microcosms combined. So that's kind of an example of what systems thinking is talking about. So by definition, it's the convergence of the individual systems to form a complex structure and whose causal forces, meaning the individual characteristics, may either positively or negatively influence. Okay? The reason I specifically stressed positively or negatively influence, when you get to working on your projects, you're going to start talking about contributing factors. And you have to realize that contributing factors can be either positive or negative. Dr. Corey, over the next 3 weeks, is going to go more in depth about all of that. So just kind of put that in your pocket and keep it. Okay, leadership essentials. So we've got 5 things here. So you have to ID the most useful information and how to use it. If the information isn't useful, it's not going to inform your research or your work at all. Motivate and work with others. That goes back to working together that we had talked about previously. Taking risks. Why is it important to take risks?
Because nothing is ever really done in comfort zone.
Right? Exactly. So I have found in my life a lot of the things that were the most meaningful for me were the most difficult as well. So anything worth doing is typically difficult. Communicate at different levels. We talked about communication a little bit earlier. So communication is key across all areas of public health, and it's knowing also how to articulate that at every level. So you have to know your audience, right? If you're writing a research article, you're going to write that in a particular way. If you're talking to a fourth grade class about choosing healthy snacks and exercising every day, you're not going to talk to them the same way that you're writing in a journal article, right? Okay, so it's really important to be able to articulate what you're trying to say, but across a variety of levels. So you really need to think critically at a high functioning level. And that goes into number 5, which is act as a systems thinker with an understanding of how complexity affects their work. So here is just a chart of some different practitioners, managers, and leaders. So I'm going to point out just a few key characteristics to kind of differentiate between the 3 groups. Why is it important to have these 3 groups of people? Kind of going back to why it's important to have diversity within your group. Because they're going to have different what? They're going to have different perspectives, right? And it's important to have those different perspectives so we don't have that myopic view. So leaders, they can innovate. They ask, that should not be why and why, that should be what and why. They ask what and why. Practitioners ask the who and the where. Managers ask the how and the when. So if you'll notice, there's a bit of overlap between the 3, and that's what makes them that cohesive unit, is even though they're working as individuals, they're all still working towards the same common goal. Does anybody have any questions thus far? Feel free to just blurt out and ask any questions if you have any. So I tend to talk fast, so we'll end up with time. Okay, so we're going to go over a couple of characteristics that make up a good leader. These are going to be emotional intelligence and cultural competence. So just going into those, can someone give me a couple ideas about what they think emotional intelligence and cultural competence are?
I know that cultural competence is being aware of like the type of people you're working with and understanding where they come from and their beliefs and morals and stuff.
Exactly.
And being respectful of that.
Exactly. So, me, as a married white American female, am I going to have the same needs as a single black female from Nigeria? No, definitely not. So that's a really good example of cultural competence. What about emotional intelligence?
If I go back to kind of keeping your emotions in check, even if something doesn't go as planned, still have that respect for each other.
It is, yeah, very much so. That's a really good base definition, and we're going to build on that here in just a second. Okay, so leaders set the emotional intelligence. It also sometimes is referred to as emotional quotient, or EQ. The emotional intelligence culture for their organizations. So how they react to things directly impacts the morale, the turnover, and relationships with colleagues, and ultimately patient relationships. Patient relationships is kind of a bit specific here, but just know the population that you're working with. It's going to affect those relationships as well. So the leader sets the EI culture for the organization, which directly impacts all of these things. Personal competence is the foundation of emotional intelligence. This is comprised of self-awareness and self-management. What is the difference between self-awareness and self-management?
I think awareness is just being conscious of the potentials, and then self-management is how you channel those potentials.
Exactly. So I can be aware of a character flaw of mine, like, I don't know, being loud and obnoxious. I am loud, but I'm not obnoxious. If I say I'm aware of that flaw, but I don't care, I'm going to be who I am anyway, I'm being self-aware, but I'm not self-managing. Okay? So, what do you guys feel is the most important thing that you can garner from your master's program? Is it that piece of paper at the end? No, not so much. Is it the skills that you're learning? Okay. Foundational skills can be taught to anybody. What's important? You're thinking something, what is it?
Yeah, so this is my second year here, and I look back, I feel there were a few things I didn't know about myself when I came in here. So the master's program seemed to go beyond the knowledge to understanding who you are, and it helps you to become a better person. So I would say the soft skills are really part of what I've gained so far in this master's program.
Did you read my notes?
No.
Okay. Yes, it is soft skills, exactly. And when a group of professionals, public health professionals were polled, 45% said soft skills was the most important thing. You know why? Because they said that they could teach foundational skills to anyone. They can teach someone how to run an analysis. They can teach someone how to write for a journal. They cannot teach people how to be emotionally intelligent. That core starts within you, right? So basically, you can't teach somebody how to play nice. Okay. So these are skills that go into emotional intelligence. You have the skill of self-perception, being able to constructively look within yourself and say, is there something I need to change to be more emotionally competent? Self-expression, stress management, decision-making, social awareness, interpersonal relationships, and relationship management. So, when it comes to self-expression, has anybody here seen the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off? Yeah, okay. So, the instructor, for those of you who haven't, and now I feel like really old. I'm not that much older than you, I promise. So when the instructor in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, he's standing in the front of the class, and he has his little clipboard here, and he's calling roll, and he goes, Bueller, Bueller, anyone? If I stood up here and talked that way the entire class, I guarantee you within 15 minutes, everyone would either be asleep or walked out, right? So it's knowing how to express yourself effectively as well, okay? Along with that, sometimes it takes, what's the right word here? So I may not understand why people aren't responding to me the way I want them to respond to me. You have to look at how you're expressing yourself first to really understand why someone is reacting the way that they are, okay? There's some people who just don't express themselves well. Gotta work on that, okay? So emotional intelligence, in a nutshell, is the ability to have constructive interpersonal interactions, communicate effectively, and maintain professionalism in a stressful environment. Who likes stress? Nobody, okay? It does horrible, horrible things to you, all right? I don't have any gray hair though, I promise. So, there are some really great online tools that you can use. Google is your friend. Google emotional intelligence and take some of those tests and really get a good gauge for where you are with your emotional intelligence. So kind of going back to what I was talking about with the most important thing you can gather from your master's program. And I said emotional intelligence can't be taught, right? That doesn't mean that you can't change. They're two entirely different things because you can look within yourself and decide to make a change on emotional intelligence, right? But you have to have that self-perception and the desire to make the change to increase that emotional intelligence. Have I lost anybody? No? Awesome. You get to see me again in a few weeks, by the way. And then I'm going to get really hyper because I like quality improvement tools. I'm kind of a nerd. All right, cultural competence. So what role does culture play in both individuals and in the community? So first, just individuals. What role does culture play for individuals? How does it affect who they are?
I
It
think
generally affects their perspective on things
Sure.
because of the limitation of how they're supposed to do some things, how they're meant to accept some things. So, I guess.
Exactly. And what were you going to say?
yeah, just similar to what you said. Your culture as a person will determine how you dress, how you breathe, how you conduct yourself.
Exactly. Exactly. Very much so. So, you must reach out to help others understand importance and interconnectedness of public health. When I'm saying interconnectedness, what does that go back to?
Systems.
Bless you. Yes, that's correct. So, culture exerts significant influence on what? Health-seeking behaviors, attitudes, diets, choice of healthcare resources, whether it's modern, traditional, self-treatment, or no treatment at all. Of these, what is one of these that you really would think would be one of the more apparent differences across cultures? Attitude. Okay.
Diet.
So for me, it's diet, because I really like to eat things, and I any time I go somewhere, having been in higher education for a while now, I have had the very fortunate opportunity to meet all of these awesome people from all different cultures. And one of my favorite things to do with my graduate students when I worked in biology was we would do this potluck, and everybody would bring a dish from their home country. 'Cause I like to eat. So everything was kind of based around food for me. So it doesn't always just have to be between countries, right? I'm from Florida. So in my lifetime, I have eaten approximately 37 whole alligators because I'm from Florida, and that's what we do in Florida. We eat alligator all the time. And it is deep fried. I mean, like deep fat fried, and it is fabulous. But because I'm in public health and I'm going to eat responsibly and I'm going to be a good example for my blessed children, I'm not going to deep fry my alligator tail anymore. I'm going to oven bake it. Okay? So you have to think in that context that just because you're within the same culture, that doesn't mean there's not cultural differences. They can be from county to county, they can be from city to city or state to state. Okay? So kind of don't think about it so broadly. Culture is a very major influencer across all of these aspects. Yeah, that was my last point. Okay, so how do you increase your competency and sensitivity to all of these areas, the emotional intelligence, cultural competence? You have to have self-awareness. You have to recognize your own strengths and weaknesses, as well as your own prejudices, right? Because you're automatically going to be kind of weighted towards one thing or another depending on the topic. So the self-awareness really goes back to that emotional intelligence piece. We have preconceived notions about each other, right? So if let's see, I can't think of anything off the top of my head for some other reason. What are some preconceived notions that you could have about someone from Kentucky? I'm sorry?
I was just gonna say, like, growing up in Tennessee, we were always like, well, people in Kentucky don't wear shoes.
Right, okay. and that's a cultural thing here in Tennessee, the whole, oh, well, they're barefoot and pregnant thing, right? Okay, yeah, that's a cultural thing. So that's a preconceived notion that this certain group of people has lots of babies and they don't wear shoes, okay? We have to get away from those preconceived notions. You can have cultural competence for one group but not for another group. So it's really far-reaching. You have to have cultural competency across the wide spectrum of groups, okay? Think of how boring it would be if everybody was the same. remember the group think theory, right? Everybody's thinking the same, we all agree, it's kumbaya and flowers, that's great, except you're not gonna get anywhere. So nationwide, there is a lack of respect for differences. Yes?
Yes.
Yes, okay? We have to change that culture and we have to respect our differences. You don't have to agree with people, but you do have to respect the differences amongst them. So I am going to challenge each one of you to respect the differences among you when you're working in your groups, okay? Cultural competence. So now thinking from more of a global perspective, the culture of organizations within a region is greatly affected by the context in which it operates and from which it draws its workers, the local and the national culture. So if you have an organization within a community, what do you want it to look like?
Community-based.
Yes. So you want it to be representative of and reflective of the community that the organization is based in. If we have an organization in China, do we want to staff that organization entirely with white middle-aged females? No. That is not going to be reflective of the culture there. They are not going to understand fully the needs of that community, regardless of how much cultural competence they have. They're going to have to bring in members of the community in order to truly understand how they can make a difference. So the organizational culture should be reflective and representative of the community that it's in. Oh boy, okay, now we get to do an exercise. Leadership compass. So, I'm going to just kind of explain the directions real quick, and when Sylvester gets back, we are going to do the quick leadership compass exercise. So, what this does is it really tells you how you make decisions, okay, and how you make your choices. There is, I don't remember how many questions, it's like one page front and back. But there will be little check boxes. So in each one of these sections, what you're going to do, if you agree with the statement it says, you're going to check that box. Okay? And then for each group, you're going to tally up your total number of checks. Whatever group has the most number of checks at the end of the exercise, that is what type of decision maker or choice maker you are. Okay? So that's going to tell you your dominant leadership style. One thing I want to implore you to do, if you feel comfortable doing it, is when you meet with your groups to really get the contract in order, bring this paper with you. Okay? If you feel comfortable doing that, share it with each other. And it can help you to really assign the roles that are going to be a best fit for the type of leader that person is. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Let me just... So, moving forward, we're going to go into partnerships now. And there are basically 3 main characteristics of good partnerships. So the first one is to appreciate the importance of working collaboratively with diverse communities and constituencies. What's a constituency? To be honest with you, the first time I heard the word was in, what's that movie? It's about bluegrass music and no. I don't know. I can't think of it now. Totally irrelevant. Anyway, does anybody know what a constituency is? Yes.
Like a group of people that you serve?
Right. It's a group of people that you serve. So what might a constituency also be? That is also a type of thought process. It's a what?
System.
It's a system. Yes. Do not be afraid to speak up in this class. Okay. So, does this look kind of familiar to you guys?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, you've probably seen it a lot at this point. So here is your public health system in a nutshell. You have your environment, which constitutes a whole bunch of different things. You have your social environment, your political public policy, your economical environment, your cultural demographics, your technology environment. So all of these things kind of feed into your public health system, right? Your mission and values, we're going to kind of get into that here in a minute. And it's really going to be some useful information because you're going to be writing your own mission and values as, I think it's part of phase 2 of your project. So, but you have to have structure and process to lead to your outcomes. So your infrastructure is your resources and your relationships that are necessary to carry out the core functions and essential services of public health. And by now I'm sure you guys can do the essential services of public health in your sleep. Okay. So why is it important to have relationships? Why even bother with it?
So, relationship with the community or with one another.
Both.
Okay, from the community perspective,
Mhm.
if you are bringing an intervention to a community,
Mhm.
there will probably be a resistance if you do not have a relationship with them. They have to know who you are, why you are there. They can be scared,
Yes.
So, but when you have a relationship with the community, it's easy to come and intervene. in the
Mhm.
community.
Yeah, I'm going to modify that statement just a little. Instead of it being easy, it's easier.
Okay.
Right? Right? Okay. Because you may be wanting to come in here and really turn things upside down. It's not necessarily going to be an easy process, but it will be easier if you have buy-in from your stakeholders or have these relationships with the community. Right? Okay. So public health leaders recognize that the only way to effectively improve health in the community is by working together as a community. If I go into a community and say, listen, this is what we are going to do. Every one of you are never allowed to have pizza again. You can only have pizza if it's cauliflower crust and only vegetables, no sauce, and vegan cheese. What would you want to throw at me? Right? Okay. Yeah, real pizza. Okay, so that's not going to work. You're going to have established relationships with the community in order to be effective. So this means you're going to organize individuals and organizations with an interest in solving community health problems. What is going to be important about those organizations? What do they have to look like?
The community.
Yes, thank you. He speaks. Okay, so this is a single organization approach to tackle different problems. So we have our one organization here, and we had this organization working on a bunch of different problems. So they may be dealing with health education or health literacy, health access, health inequities. They're tackling all of these problems, and this is the typical scope of an organization, right? Well, this isn't really what we want it to look like. Instead, we want it to look like this multiple organization approach where everybody together is solving a single problem. What type of thinking is this?
Systems.
Yay! Yes, this is systems thinking. So basically, you're using the diversity of your community to impact that single problem. When you're taking this multiple organization approach, do you think you're going to have more of an impact or less than an impact than the single organization approach? More, exactly. You have the potential to do more. It can allow for greater efficiency, and it allows for those specific skill sets of each one of those organizations to be used to their fullest. So tying this back to your project, this is where taking your leadership skill scores and applying that to giving out who is going to do which task. That's where this really comes in, is using everyone's skills to the fullest. Public health partnerships. So Partnerships are collaborative or coordinated efforts among public health organizations to address community health problems that are beyond the boundaries of individual organizations. So this is why we have that systems thinking concept, because that individual organization really isn't going to address the problem effectively, okay? Partnering organizations seek to achieve the common outcome and typically improvement in one or more areas of public health. Just because you're only addressing one problem, that doesn't mean that the outcomes are only going to affect one area of public health. Okay, it can be multifaceted and still be addressing one particular issue. So thinking of your project, you have selected your area for improvement. Yes? Have you guys talked about topics? Okay, well you're going to. So we're going to assume that you have just for the time being. All right, so you're going to select your area for improvement and you're going to bring together individuals and organizations that have interest in achieving that same outcome. So in your project, you are going to explicitly identify people who are going to be part of your coalition. We don't want you to say, we are going to have the family planning clinic down the street. No, you're going to explicitly say, we're going to have the Total Woman Clinic in Greenville, Tennessee as part of our coalition. This is why we're going to have them as part of our coalition. These other people are not going to be included because you also have to list your exclusion factors. So what are some things, say you're working on tobacco cessation. Do you want tobacco organizations to be part of your coalition?
No.
Why?
They want you to buy their products.
Yeah,
They're not
they're
trying to
involved.
fix the issue.
Right. So you just have to be smart about who you are and are not going to include in your coalition, but you have to define what makes these people good for your coalition and why you're going to specifically exclude other people and or organizations. Okay? Think about obesity. Would we want a representative from McDonald's to be on an obesity coalition? No, because I'm not even sure that's me, y'all. Okay? I think there may be some sawdust up in there. So we wouldn't want them trying to work on a coalition that is targeted towards obesity. Collaborative leadership. So we talked about leadership first because leadership is a component of partnerships, okay? Partnerships are led by collaborative leaders who act collaboratively to solve agreed upon issues. Leaders use supportive and inclusive methods to ensure that those they represent are part of the change process. If we go into a community to start a coalition and we say we have all this data and it on paper shows that our idea is awesome, it is going to make a difference. If the community doesn't agree with that or they aren't part of that change, are you going to be effective? No. So not only do you have to show them why this is important, you have to make them believe why it's important, and then they have to be part of the change process. This requires a new notion of power. The more power we share, the more we have to use. So kind of going back to that single organization model, we have this one organization that has all the power. They're the ones influencing the change on these variety of health topics, right? Okay, now we go to the multiple organization model. All of these people have power. Everybody is sharing the power. As a cohesive unit, we have much more power together than we do separately, right? So that is what this is saying with the new notion of power. So it's not about one individual steering the coalition. It's a collaboration among organizational leaders. What is the difference between those two? What is the difference between just this one individual or one organization steering the coalition versus having this systems thinking model?
Resources available?
I'm sorry?
The resources available?
Exactly, it's a pooling of resources. What are some other things?
Division of labor.
I'm sorry?
Division of labor.
Yes, division of labor. So that goes back to having the best people doing the jobs that fit their skill set the best, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And that goes into our next slide. Advantages of partnerships. 1, pooling of resources. So, part of your proposal to the Commissioner of Health is in regards to partnership advantages. So basically, here are some advantages that you can have in your coalition project. You can list some of these. What are the advantages of your coalition? You're not simply going to say, here's our coalition, here's what we're gonna do, and that's it. We wanna know why. Why are you doing it? Why is it advantageous for this coalition to exist in this community? Yes, ma'am.
For that, is trust considered a resource?
It is considered a resource.
Because if you involve a certain organization that has trust with the people and you bring them in.
Yeah, and so that leans back to the established relationships with the community. You have to have that relationship there. You have to have that trust, and if you don't have the trust, you have to build the trust. But it is absolutely a good resource to have. So you function more efficiently than a single organization within the systems thinking process. It also adds credibility to your programs and services. Why would it add credibility, having more people as part of your coalition rather than just one single organization steering it?
And serve as checks, so that some of
Yes.
the resources might not be overused or something.
So it's like a checks and balances system as well. One hand knows what the other hand is doing, type of thing, right? You have good communication. It's also going to ensure a broad range of inputs and perspectives. Facilitate communication across members and build trust and personal relationships. So for your pooling of resources, everybody brings something to the table. And that's important to think of when you're thinking about resources, because resources aren't necessarily just those tangible things. It is the trust, it is the good communication skills. You're adding credibility. It also shows a commitment among multiple individuals and organizations. If you have this one organization and they're the only one vying for this coalition, it's not going to carry as much weight as all of these people that think this is a good idea. So we talked about diverse perspectives a lot this afternoon, right? So from improving team effectiveness to characteristics of strong leadership, emotional intelligence, and cultural competence. All of these things lend to why it is good to have that broad range of inputs and perspectives. I want you to look at facilitating communication across members. So this is, we have organizations working on the same thing is very different than organizations working together on the same thing. What is the difference between those? Say we have 3 organizations here, and they're all working towards tobacco cessation. And then we have 3 organizations over here, but they're all working together on tobacco cessation. What is the difference between those 2 groups?
There could be overlapping of services.
Okay?
So if the 3 organizations are offering rehabilitative services, they're spending resources and money that the other group might only have one of the organizations provide and reinvest in something else.
Excellent. Very good point. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, they might have the same vision, but the follow-up plans might be different, might be overlapping, might be waste of resources, and
Exactly.
might not be the same.
Yes. Very good. Does anybody have any questions about really this part of it and how it ties in to your project before we move forward? Okay, and like I said, Dr. Corey is really going to get in to the nitty-gritty stuff about your project and lots of details about it in the next few weeks. Okay, so identifying critical stakeholders. This is obviously directly related to your project because you will be identifying who your critical stakeholders are. And again, explicitly, not just saying this clinic down the street. So who are stakeholders? Stakeholders are the public health constituency, i.e. the people and organizations who benefit from public health and support public health actions. Can anybody give me some examples of stakeholders within public health?
Planned Parenthood.
I'm sorry?
Planned Parenthood.
Local health departments.
Good organizations.
The possibilities are pretty much endless here, right? Because public health can impact a wide array of things. So stakeholder groups, and this is as defined by the Institute of Medicine. Have you guys been assigned an article that had to do with the Institute of Medicine? Yes, okay, this came from that. Okay, so this should look familiar to you. Don't look like you don't know what this is. Alright, so you're gonna start with your community, okay? So this is your members of the community and your leaders of the community who can speak to the needs of the community. Then your healthcare delivery system, this is gonna be your hospitals, your primary care, your outpatients, it's gonna be all aspects related to healthcare. Your employers and businesses, these are impacted by population health. The media, use of social media and traditional media can really help to increase the exposure about a bunch of different public health issues. And then academia, obviously, and governmental public health. So all of these things combined, all of these stakeholders combined, assure the conditions for population health. Is anybody, no, you won't have taken that yet. Is anybody considering taking Dr. Hale's population health class? No? Okay, well, I've, do what?
So they may not know yet.
Yeah, so that should come up next semester. And if it's available, I would highly, highly encourage you to take it. Dr. Hale is a fabulous instructor. The course is amazing. It's not just that regurgitation of information. You're actually going to be applying what you've learned. You're going to be working with real data, offering up real, oh, my words aren't coming to me right now. You're going to be offering up solutions for your problems, okay? By actually using these real data sets, and you're going to do some analyses. So if you have the opportunity, I highly would encourage you to take Dr. Hale's population health class when it comes up, okay? So potential partners and stakeholders. I want you to use this slide when you're doing your project. When you're identifying those stakeholders, this is going to be extremely important. Okay, who might be missing on this list just as you look over it?
Hospital?
Okay. What about policy and regulatory officials? What kind of role does policy play in public health? It's like a really big one, right? So there is a vast number of policies that influence public health. So one of the project that I'm working on right now, it's kind of looking at access to and utilization of contraceptive services. In a state that has about a 45% unintended pregnancy rate. So how might current policies around contraception affect the work that they're trying to do there? Think about something as simple as insurance coverage, right? If insurance coverage changes through Medicaid, which supplies a lot of contraceptive services to women who are either uninsured or underinsured, right? So if that changes and these women are not able to have access to those contraceptives, how is that going to impact the population as a whole?
Negatively.
Why? What's it going to do? We have more babies, right? Mm-hmm. So is that going to create a cost strain on the environment?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So you have to think about, you have to look at small picture and big picture synchronously, okay? So yes, if you're looking at the small picture, you're thinking, okay, well, that's going to increase the population, that's going to increase the strain on the resources, but then you have to think big picture as well as state economy, how these women's lives are going to be impacted, how those children's lives are going to be impacted. It's not just the one thing, okay? So again, make sure to explicitly define your stakeholders. You may have to do some digging about your topic to be able to identify those stakeholders, but make sure and do that so you know that you understand your target community. Moving on. All right. Describe alternative strategies for collaboration and partnerships. So the functions of a partnership is service delivery, planning and policy development, surveillance and assessment, public and professional education, and outreach. So when we talk about service delivery, this is when like you can partner with organizations to provide service or community outreach as well. Surveillance. Does anybody have some ideas about what surveillance might be? Surveillance and assessment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ongoing data collection.
Why would that be important?
But to track disease, to monitor maybe there is increase or decrease in occurrence of diseases, how effective treatment is.
Okay, and so when I have this data and we can track that and we can see a trend, could that potentially influence public health policy?
Yeah.
Absolutely, okay? So surveillance is your collaborations and or partnerships between governmental public health, your hospitals, your labs. Think community health and community health needs assessments. You guys heard those before? Yeah. Okay. If you do the population health class with Dr. Hale, you'll hear a lot about community needs assessments. Public and professional education. So have you guys heard the term CMEs? It's continuing medical education units. They're also called CEUs, depending on what organization it is. So this is basically just so that all of these people are staying up to date with the most current literature and staying educated. That's what this public and professional education is. Structural characteristics of partnerships. So we have informal collaboration. What do you think informal collaboration? How would that differ from a formal relationship? Other than those 3 explicitly listed on the slide. Yes.
Maybe informal is just, setting up a meeting with some community leaders, ask them how they feel about certain programs and such. Saying, hey, let's meet up at this place with all these different people from the community.
Exactly. So think along the lines of like a fitness club or a running club, or maybe some of you like to crochet or knit. I don't know. So think it's the club atmosphere. Well, no, not the club atmosphere. Fix that. Like group partnership. I'm moving on from that statement. So you're not having any contractual agreements, okay? There's no real rules or regulations. It's just extremely informal. It's one of those where if someone says they're going to be part of the club but they don't show up, you're like, meh, whatever, we didn't like them anyway. All right? So, but for formal relationships, if you say you're going to be there, someone expects you to be there. You have these contractual agreements. If you say you're going to do something, someone expects you to do them. You're going to have those 2 different structures for partnerships. Informal collaboration. So there is no formal leader. There are no policies, no procedures. There are, however, unwritten norms governing their behavior. Okay? And that goes back to if you say you're going to do something, they kind of expect you to do it, but the difference between formal and informal is if you don't do it with informal, there's like, you're not going to get fined or anything like that, okay? The leader is to recognize their existence and understand that they can provide an important gauge of the health of the organization. What I want you to understand here about the term leader, because I understand that with point 1, you said, well, there is no formal leader. Well, there's not. When I say leader, I'm talking about, remember how I talked about your group setup, how you're going to have the formal leader and the informal leader. This is the informal leader that I'm talking about in point 4. Okay, so it's not explicit leader who says we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. It's more of a kind of overseeing things, but they don't really govern anything. Okay, informal collaboration. So common type of partnership, especially between hospitals and local health departments. So hospitals and health departments, they have these kind of loose agreements. They're not exactly contractual agreements, where they have a long history of working with each other in the same community, and they depend on their interpersonal relationships to enforce their unwritten norms. So they have this general consensus of, this is what we want to do, here's how we're going to go about it, but it's not exactly written down anywhere, okay? So those are those unwritten rules. It's loosely structured agreements between organizations that have a long history of operation in the community, and they depend on their reputation to enforce the provisions of the partnership or those unwritten rules. It's easy to develop and maintain. It's flexible, but sometimes hard to enforce. Why would it be hard to enforce?
It's loosely structured.
Yes. So what type of actions might that type of environment foster?
Mistrust.
Unaccountable.
Unaccountable. So if I lose interest, is anybody going to say anything to me about it? No, not so much. If I just stop doing my work, is anybody going to say anything to me about it? No, not necessarily. So because of that lack of accountability, there's not really much that can be done about it. So moving on to formal collaboration. This does have boundaries. All of the members do have distinct roles. So this is the type of coalition that you guys are going to put together. And it starts with your contract. So you have that written document that has each person working in a distinct role. They have specific tasks that are performed and measured, and they operate within a specific organizational context. Now, that's not to say that the roles you have aren't going to overlap with each other, because they will, and that's really good that they do, but you're going to have that one main role that you're going to be responsible for. The leader is to understand how to craft and nurture teams that are effective, productive, and satisfying to their members. So this goes back to having the good leadership skills, emotional intelligence, cultural competence. So there are different models that exist to formalize the relationships among these partners, okay? Contracts may be used to specify the role and responsibilities of each partner, just like you guys are going to do. Then there's shared governance. Here they have a new organization that's formed, which has a governing board representing the partnering organizations and is responsible for the decision making. So what might shared governance look like? Can you think of a scenario where they may have shared governance? It doesn't necessarily have to be in a public health setting, because these go across the spectrum. Yes.
Thinking of this COVID merger, there's a board that's been appointed to oversee some of the things that are happening with ballot health and population measures.
Why might that be advantageous in this scenario?
Well, for when ballot health covers multiple states, so you need representatives from each state. And of course, we need people, because it has to, ballot health has to achieve certain population measures. You need public health involved in it as well too, who's tracking a lot of that. So.
Exactly. So you brought up a good point there about the board and how it's also, they have members of the community from there. Why is that important?
A lot of the community was angry about it, actually, to start off with. I think to get everyone on board with it though.
Right. So that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. If the community is not involved in the process of change, how effective are you going to be?
then one of the reasons why it is good to involve them is, for example, in Nigeria, we have something similar to this on HIV.
Okay.
And you would not know the needs of this group, or you would not address their needs effectively if they are not part of that team. So we have this kind of coalition to address HIV,
Yes.
and the members who have HIV are able to speak up on what their needs are. It is not about the knowledge the others have now, but about the needs of those who we are helping. So.
Absolutely. If we cannot understand the needs of the community we are trying to help, we are not going to do any good. We need to be able to articulate an achievable mission, vision, core values, and operating rules. I believe this directly addresses maybe questions 7 and 8 when you get to phase 2 of your project. So just kind of jot that down. This slide means this. So mission statement. Your mission statement is the reason you exist, not you personally, your coalition. It's a very specific statement as to why the partnership was established and what it hopes to do. Okay, so here's an example. To reduce the burden of childhood injuries in Northeast Tennessee through planning, policy, and program development, research, and community education. I'm just kind of go through these briefly, and we're going to look at a few different examples, both in public health and outside of public health, to give you a little bit better idea of what all of these statements should look like in your proposals. Your vision statement. This communicates the future results. So basically, this is going to be your outcome, what you want to achieve, okay? What's the payoff of your efforts? A community free from preventable childhood injuries. So if you achieve your mission, your vision is what's going to happen. Your core values. These are your guiding principles that participating organizations believe in and seek to promote. If your partnering organizations don't have the same set of core values, what is going to happen? What is the potential to happen? You have to all be in it for the same reasons, right?
Yeah.
Okay? So, an example would include, and obviously this is a very small list because there's a plethora of core values that could lead or guide your coalition. So, service excellence, integrity, ethical behavior, social justice, and equity. That's equity, not inequity. I meant and equity. Okay, let me go here. So this is the vision, mission, and core values of the College of Public Health. I want you guys just to take a minute and look over these. So the vision is the ETSU College of Public Health is the school of choice for students who want an exceptional educational experience in a world-class environment. So that is going to be our what? Our what? Yes, this is the outcome. So if the College of Public Health achieves everything that they state in their mission, this is what will occur. Okay? So their core values that guide these mission and value or mission and vision is altruism, community service, dignity, diversity, education, excellence, integrity, research, and teamwork. I will get to that later. Okay, so here's the American Public Health Association. So this one is a bit broader because obviously they're going to be covering more area. And you see, it doesn't have to be long. This is 5 words-ish, or I can't count, I don't know, 7, 6, somewhere around there. It doesn't have to be long. It needs to make your point. It can be succinct, but just make it clear and cohesive. I was actually going to show you guys the Ballad Health one, but ironically they don't have their values listed, so I opted not for that. Appalachia Service Project. So here's, I wanted to throw this one in here, one because Dr. Beatty put it in there, And two, because this is also a nonprofit. So, there they are. Okay. So their mission is a Christian ministry open to all people that inspires hope and service through volunteer home repair and replacement in Central Appalachia. So if they are able to achieve that, they will be able to eradicate substandard housing in Central Appalachia and transform everyone who comes in contact with the ministry. Does anybody have any questions about how to write their mission, vision, or core values? Nope. Okay. You guys will get to goals and objectives as well, but I'm fairly certain that Dr. Corey is going to go over that over the next 3 weeks. Okay. We're in the home stretch, guys. Does anybody need a break before we continue? Are we good? You guys are so quiet. Okay. Operating rules. You gotta remember, I'm used to having 4 kids in the house, so there's never not noise. And that it feels weird. Alright, so your operating rules, these can also be called your bylaws or your policies and procedures. It really just, they all mean the same thing. It just really varies by organization. So this is how will meetings be managed? How will decisions be made? Roles and responsibilities of each one of the partners. What are the requirements for membership of the coalition? These are all things that you will have to explain in detail in your paper. And I do mean in detail, okay? You're going to lay out exactly what can be expected from each organization within the partnership. There needs to be lots and lots of detail in this section. Where are meetings held? How often? Who are they led by? What modality is it? Is it going to be in person? Is it teleconference? Are you going to have to travel somewhere? All of those things need to be covered, including your decision-making strategies. So compare models here. Think board of directors versus one lead organization. You're going to have to lay all of that structure out. And this is for the membership. This is the part where I said make sure to include who you're going to exclude and why you're going to exclude them. Use collaborative methods and strategies to motivate others and achieve health goals. So we're going to go over some strategies here, and there's a few of them, so just bear with me. Strategy 1, assess the readiness of constituents to take action. So think about this within the context of community. People are motivated to act when they feel a sense of community. They see the health issue as relevant to them, as threatening to them, and worthy of their time. They believe that the benefits of participation outweigh the costs, and they view the political and social climate as supportive. If the political or social climate is not supportive, why would they not want to be part of it? Let's look at just the social aspect of it.
So I will give an example of this kind of project.
Okay.
We were working with men who have sex with men in a society where they are not supposed to be given a free hand to move, you know.
Yes.
So the people were not really supportive because they knew that the government was not in support of those people.
Mm-hmm.
So it took a lot of effort to get them to support that kind of initiative. Exactly.
So this is a very excellent example, and now I'm going to give you a very bad one. So does anybody on here watch like Live PD or any of the, oh, so addicted to those. All right, so someone shoots somebody, and there's 20 people around, and every single one of them do that. I didn't see anything, I swear, even though they were 10 feet away, right? Why are they not gonna say anything?
Because they don't feel safe.
I'm sorry?
They don't feel safe.
They don't feel safe, right? So there are social implications of them saying something to the police officers, so they're not going to say a word. Same premise here. Again, really bad example, really good example. Okay? So if the social climate is not supportive, they're not going to support it for fear of retribution or shaming or who knows what other things, right? So think about disadvantaged populations, okay? Often the interests of individuals do not align with the issues you are trying to address. Their immediate needs may supersede the population health issue that is of concern to you. So what are you going to have to do first before you can start your project?
Fulfill the immediate needs.
Right. You're going to have to address the immediate needs, because if those immediate needs are not met, your coalition is not going to do a bit of good, because you're not going to have that community buy-in. So you've got to also keep in mind that current political and social climate as well. Strategy 2, mobilizing constituencies. What does this mean, mobilizing constituencies?
To get them to act.
Right, to get who to act?
Members of the community.
Yes, okay. So it's the mobilization or bringing together or constituency building, bringing them into readiness and organizing people and resources for active service. How are people going to get to know about your organization? Can you just start up your coalition and start doing all the things?
No.
No, why?
Because what if you can't just start something if you don't know what you're actually starting?
Okay, yes, but you're also going to have to get out there in the community, right? You're gonna have to let them know why this coalition is important to them, specifically address how this coalition is going to address their needs, how it's going to improve their health outcomes. How are you going to do that? Okay, talk to them. What are some other ideas?
Social media.
Social media, what else?
Town hall meetings.
I'm sorry?
Town hall meetings.
Town hall meetings. So in your project, this is also something you're going to address. You can't just say, I'm going to build this awesome coalition, we're going to do so many great things, but the community doesn't know a thing about it. So you're going to have to tell us explicitly, we are going to inform the community of this coalition and how it could positively affect the community's health outcomes by doing this, 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 and this. So make sure to include that as well. Public health leaders can mobilize the community by stimulating interest in health issues and then organizing partnerships to respond to those issues. When we say public health leaders, we're not specifically talking about the strict definition of public health leaders. Who else might this entail within the community?
I would think about non-state actors from non-profit organizations, advocacy groups.
Okay, so organizational leaders.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. What is another group? We said that policy really affects coalition and health outcomes, right? So who would we want to include to help us get the word out about the organization?
Town officials.
Right, so you think about politicians, right? What do politicians do? They go out and lobby for their ideas. You guys are gonna have to do the same thing. You're in essence going to act as politicians and you're gonna go out and lobby for your coalition, really getting the word out there. Strategy 3, you're going to identify your lead agency. So partnerships do require a lead agency. And any of the organizations that you choose to be part of your coalition can be that lead agency. You're just going to need to define why you chose that lead agency and why they are the best. The lead agency motivates partners to collaborate and develops a shared vision. They can be the local health department, a private organization, can be a nonprofit, but it should be neutral or an objective party with scientific expertise and community ties. So just remain cognizant about who is going to be the best lead agency for your coalition. Strategy 4, secure buy-in from key stakeholders. So think about the motivators for both your organizations and the individuals within the community. What is going to motivate them to want to be part of your coalition? Okay? Make your collaboration with them a win-win situation for both the community and the partnerships. You're going to seek support from relevant policy and regulatory officials, recruit potential partners, and secure their buy-in. For the policy and regulatory officials as well, make sure again to explicitly name who those are going to be for your coalition. Strategy 5, develop a partnership structure. So it's always going to be best to keep your structure as simple as possible, particularly when there's multiple partnerships, because it will cause confusion otherwise. It could also cause them to think that the barriers to having this partnership outweigh the benefits. So I want you to take your topic, once you identify what that is, you're going to go online and you're going to search health coalitions that are existing that work on your topic, okay? Don't reinvent the wheel. Feel free to look at their ideas, jot them down, go through several of them, and then compile those best ideas to help inform you to do the structure for your coalition. Basically, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Okay. Strategy 6, establish your partnership's identity. Why is identity so important? Think in terms of, let's do tobacco cessation. Why is identity important for tobacco cessation? Think about current media campaigns surrounding tobacco cessation. What is it about that branding that makes it work? Or not work? Yes, ma'am.
Well, I guess with the tobacco cessation, those commercials where you have the people who have either died, they're like, oh, blah, so and so died because of this, or
Right.
the lady with the voice box.
Or lack of voice
Oh
box.
yeah, or lack of voice box.
Yeah.
Those kind of use not necessarily fear tactic, but it also puts a real person in front of your face with the consequences of smoking.
I agree with you, to a point. I definitely agree with you, because it does make it more personable because you see it.
Yeah.
It is partly a fear tactic as well, because I don't know about y'all, but that scares the crap out of me. But is everyone going to relate to that person? No. So you have to really think about your branding for your coalition, that it really is in line with your community. Remember how we talked about how your coalition has to be representative of your community, right? It has to look like your community. Your branding materials also have to fit your community. Okay, strategy 7, assessing community needs. So use tools to mobilize constituents and assess community needs. These include Healthy People 2010 and 2020 and 2030 will be out before long. Assessment protocol for excellence in public health. These are some links. I really highly encourage you guys to click on these links, take a look at these assessment tools. It's really going to help you in putting your coalition together. Mobilizing for action through planning and partnership. If you don't go to any of them except one, go to that one, okay? And then the CDC's Healthy Communities. Again, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Go and look at these, see what works, and then apply it to your coalition. Strategy 8, develop and implement your action plan. So this is going to be more aligned with phase 2 of your project. You're going to develop your action plan, including your goals and objectives. They are gonna need to be SMART objectives. Does anybody know what SMART means? No, it's an acronym. SMART. What are those?
Specific, measurable, achievable.
Okay, relevant and time bound, exactly, okay? Dr. Corey will go through that ad nauseum, and it's a very, very good thing, because writing SMART goals and objectives is difficult. There's a lot of pieces that have to go in there. So if your action plan includes health programming, be sure you use an ecological model to to plan the program activities. Evidence-based interventions, evidence-based practices, we talked about that earlier. So guide to community preventive services and the clinical preventive services guidelines. Again, Google that. Okay, strategy 9, evaluate your effectiveness. What do we mean by process evaluation? Is that the same thing as evaluating how well an intervention or a program or a coalition worked? What is it?
It means assessing each step you are taking on the project. So you assess what you are doing even in the course of the implementation before the end.
Exactly. So instead of saying, did we do things right? Or did we do the right thing? Sorry, it's did you do things right? You're going to evaluate the impact or outcome of the partnership later, and that's did you do the right things? So you're going to use the evaluation results to make your plan for the future. So surveys and assessments can be used of membership organizations or the community members. You can say, for the community, did the coalition meet your needs? Are things happening the way that we thought? Do the benefits outweigh the cost? When it comes to the partnerships of your coalition, how active were people? And then your effectiveness of your branding identity as well, and you can get that through community assessment. Ask the community, have you heard of this coalition? How do you feel about this coalition? Have you seen materials for this coalition? Strategy 10, sustaining the partnership. So we don't want to develop this coalition and then just let it go by the wayside and say, oh, well, we did this for 1 year, it was great, we had a good thing, and moving on now. No, you're going to want it to continue, okay? So maintaining the vitality of the partnership is not an easy task to achieve. You have to keep the partnership well organized and keep meetings efficient. Has anyone ever been to a meeting, regardless of type, where you're sitting there and you're like, if this person would just shut up so we can leave now? Yeah? And I don't mean today. It doesn't count. Yes. Oh, you have. Okay. Yeah. So we have all been there. Keep the meetings well organized and efficient. Ensure effective communication and the information flows. Seek constant feedback from everybody involved. And use the evaluation results to further develop your partnership. So you need to really keep everybody abreast of what's going on. Don't keep anybody in the dark. Everyone should be well informed. And the feedback is very, very important. What is working? What is not working? And then you're going to make those adjustments and course corrections moving forward. So keys to success. You need to maintain momentum through the stages of success. You're going to start with these small objectives, right? So that your initial efforts will be successful. Then you're going to build upon those successes to generate more enthusiasm, gain more support from your community, and then expand your coalition to be broader. So you're going to start with things that are reasonably attainable. And then you're going to build on those moving forward. Think long-term goal after you have started with these small objectives. So your long-term goal may be a community free of diseases, right? Well, how do we get there? Start with the small baby steps. Okay, so we are going to do another activity.